front of us. Any additions or deletions from the agenda? Hearing none, we'll declare the agenda approved, and we'll go right down to the presentation of an achievement award. And I'll turn it over to the Deputy Mayor to call down the recipient.
Sounds good. Is Valerie Sia here? Come on down, Valerie. Valerie is an 11-year-old student at Bridgewater Junior High School who won the 2019 Young Citizens Program Award. The Young Citizens Program is a national contest that sees students create engaging and inspiring history videos. Valerie's 4-minute video story, Railroaded, How the Chinese Railway Workers in British Columbia Were Treated from 1818 to 1885, explores the legacy of the Chinese laborers who immigrated to 19th century Canada to help build the railways. The video shows how the workers overcame discrimination and dangerous labor conditions to create better lives for their families. Valerie received the award at the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau, Quebec on January 19th. The medallions inscribed 2019 Young Citizens Program Award, Valerie Sia.
And we're very, very proud of you.
Yes. How do we see the video? How do we get access to video?
That's a good question. Is the video online? Is it posted online? Do you know where we can find it? Youngcitizens.ca. Wonderful. Thank you so much, and congratulations. Our next item is introduction of new staff. We have Colleen O'Neill, who is our new project manager for Energize Bridgewater. So I'll turn this over to our Director of Community Development to make the introduction.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Colleen O'Neill as our Energize Bridgewater project manager. She joined us actually on February 4th. And Colleen has over 20 years of project management experience in mid and large size projects. From 2005 to 2012, she worked at Anheuser-Busch InBev, which is the world's largest beverage company, managing a variety of things there. And then she and her husband and her son returned to Nova Scotia in 2012 and established a language services business in Mahone Bay. So she's located on the 3rd floor here at Town Hall with the rest of the Energized Bridgewater team, and I cannot say how excited I am to have her on board and helping us move the Smart Cities project forward.
Cool. Right. Just wanted to say thank you, and I'm just so pleased to be here.
Well, welcome. We're thrilled to have you here. Yeah. It's such an important project, and thrilled to have you on board.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
I was going to ask if council had any questions. That seemed amazing. So. There's a microphone right in front of you. Any announcements from members of council? I always look to Councillor Thorburn. There's got something coming up in the museum.
Didn't download it, but I will say a few things about the museum, my passion. It's open actually from Tuesday to Sunday, 1 to 5, free admission, and those hours continue to the 31st of May. And there's always some special projects going on the weekend. I just didn't get a chance to download it today. But very busy place. Please drop down and join us.
Great.
Thank you.
Other announcements from members of council? Now it's kind of a quiet time of year as we get into budget season. Well, then we'll go right down to delegations because I know Lisa's here, so we can. We have our first delegation for South Shore Dory Days. Lisa Tanner is going to talk to us about that. So come to the podium, and as you're coming down, I'll just review the delegation rules. So delegations that have come as timed delegations, and we have 2 tonight, are given 10 minutes to speak. That doesn't include back and forth and questions from council. And then if there's any additional delegations that are unscheduled, they're allowed 2 minutes. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Lisa Tanner, and I'm representing the Canadian Dory Racing Association. Just a brief history for those that don't know. We've been racing dories in Lunenburg for 68 years now. We have eliminations in June, and the winner of those eliminations go to Gloucester, Massachusetts, the end of June to race against the Americans. And in August, the Americans come to us and race us then. So 2 years ago, we decided to expand a little bit, and we trailered our 600-pound wooden boats to Mahone Bay and had fun races, which went over really, really well. Last summer, we decided to do that again, but we decided to include Bridgewater in that as well. So we did Mahone Bay in the morning, then we trucked them out here to Bridgewater and used your great park here on the river and held some fun races. It went over really, really well. We didn't have a lot of advertising. It was just a lot of word of mouth, some Facebook. So this year, we'd like to expand that again and actually make it a real event here in Bridgewater. We'd like to call it South Shore Dory Days. We'd like to hold it on August 1st, starting around 3 or 4 p.m. But we want to make it really big this year. We'd like to maybe close the streets, have some food vendors, have some entertainment, and we've invited all the breweries in the South Shore to participate. So each brewery will have 3 teams, a men's, a women's, and a mixed team, and the winner will win the Brewers' Cup. And, I didn't bring any visuals, but I brought George as my prop. So he can fill you in anything that I may have missed.
Well, just that our idea is to rotate this to each community year after year. The breweries that I represent will be entering 3 teams, one from Mahone Bay, one from Lunenburg, where we got development permission from the town yesterday to do our development there, so we'll be up and running in the summer, and one from here, from King Street. We've also recruited the Shelburne people and Boxing Rock to be in, and on the weekend we got a preliminary nod from Yarmouth and Heritage Brewery. So the idea is that all these breweries will be racing against each other for the Brewers' Cup. The proceeds will go to the Dory Racing Association. It's a very worthy cause. We just feel in our brewery that historical efforts like this are important to support and keep going, because before you know it, you lose all these skills and the knowledge involved in making these things happen. So Lisa's got a great team with her, and we're going to get in behind this. We selected Bridgewater because of the experience we had in coming to King Street, which was just phenomenal. And I have to say, I think that helped us a lot in Lunenburg to get an approval with the minimum of fuss. So such a leading community, we thought ought to be the first. Next year, it's going to Shelburne, and the year after that, it's going to Yarmouth, and we will rotate up and down the South Shore. And I think it can be a huge tourist attraction for the entire South Shore area. So we are asking for your support, and maybe Lisa can just briefly, in the 6 minutes and 37 seconds I have left, just tell you about the ask and see if you can get in behind this effort.
Right, so for in-kind services, we were asking, of course, we need barricades. We were hoping for some help with advertising. I don't know if you'd need policing for that kind of event, and garbage pickup. And yeah, any questions?
That's kind of the standard, what's requested of us when we have events downtown, like
Yeah.
Afterglow and things like that. And you're aiming for the beginning of August?
Yeah, the 1st of August. It kind of lies in between all the events we already, with eliminations and different races we have happening.
Questions from members of council? Councilor Graves?
Just a comment, I think it's great that you're taking it down to Shelburne, Yarmouth, and possibly Liverpool and others. I think that's good. Good on you.
Yeah, I think so.
Sounds like a fun event.
Yeah.
I can speak from experience, it is very difficult. I'm still sore. Councilor Thorburn?
I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, Andrew and myself and Michael and Jennifer went to Lunenburg. They had councils, and we rode against Mahone Bay and the town of Lunenburg. And I remember, I think somebody lost an oar. I don't remember who that did. And I drew Michael as a partner. I got in, sat down, and he was sitting facing, he was going the wrong way. So after I got him turned around, we had a great day. So
Yeah.
I can only hope that you have a great success.
I hope so. In turn, it'll help
Yeah.
us too. We're lacking rowers.
Sure.
It's hard to get the young kids in there. We're all in our 50s,
Yeah.
most of us now, so we need to. It'll help us to hopefully to attract some rowers to compete against these young Americans.
Great, and thanks for coming to Bridgewater, choosing Bridgewater.
Yeah, well, we'd love, the park is perfect for that, perfect. It's such easy in and out of the dories, and launching is you have a great site, and it'll be nice to use it.
Other questions? So probably the next step is just putting that request in like an official
Okay.
email or a letter that we
Okay.
can receive, and then
And then you discuss it.
we discuss it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We're a little ahead of schedule, but.
Well, I have a.
Is that clock done? Oh, that time's up. Heard it beep. So our next delegation is Jack Cram. I'm assuming the gentleman coming to the podium is Jack. So he's here with suggestions for improving King Street. So welcome, Mr. Cram.
Thank you. Okay, I live in Kraustown on the Petite River. I love rivers, it's a beautiful river, and you have a beautiful river here too. But I don't think the town's taking very good advantage of your river. I drive in, I do all my shopping and banking and so on here. And I drive in and come down Dufferin usually and along King and usually turn at the new bridge. And I'm dismayed at what I see. The park that kind of you can't see has, if anything, not had a good result. And I don't mean to offend anybody, but I'm just here to throw some ideas at you. What's missing on King Street is people. And gradually businesses are disappearing. I don't know whether I have to try and persuade anybody here that the street is dying. If you all want to say you don't have to persuade us, then we'll save about 5 minutes. Otherwise, I'll hand these photographs around. And what this first bunch shows, if you'd like to have a quick look and then pass it around, I don't have enough for everybody, so I could do the same. The first one is the Bank of Montreal, which has been vacant for quite a while. I used to bank there. They moved across the river. Virtually the entire block where the Bank of Montreal where it starts at the Bank of Montreal is closed. And then there's a big space where the fire was, and then there's some more shops where at least 2/3 are closed. And I would be very surprised if anybody wanted to open a business that involved any significant expense. I'm sorry, I did it. To establish. Gets a little better down at the other end, but not a whole lot, and things are looking a little bedraggled. Anyways, I started to think about this, and last summer I was in Europe for 4 months on a motorcycle, touring all over, and I've done that for 4 of the last 5 years. And going through cities and towns, invariably where the city or town had established a pedestrian area, no vehicles other than emergency vehicles, which would rarely be there, and purely pedestrian. And the people were flocking to these places. But there has to be something more than an area that's pedestrian. There has to be interesting shops and cafes. And that's something that I think you all know is missing here in Bridgewater, is nice cafes. I mean, you've got some, but I spoke to a couple of people just asking for their comments about this problem, and one said that's one big thing that's missing. Another came up to me while I was taking these pictures of the buildings, and he didn't even know why I was doing this, or what my purpose was. And he said, "Isn't it horrible?" referring to your main street, King Street, and what's happening to it. And it's only going to get worse if something drastic isn't done. And I'm going to come to what I suggest is possibly what could be done. Is there somewhere I can pin up a drawing? Let's show you the size.
No, we don't really have a,
Pardon?
we don't really have a place to pin anything up, no.
Well, I'll just walk around with it then. Excuse me a sec. I'll just walk around and talk about this while I do it. Somebody remind me about that wire there.
The only problem is if you're away from the microphone, then we can't, for the people that are watching online, they won't be able to hear you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they won't be able to see this anyways.
Oh, we
because I'm
can-
pointing
I think we
at
can-
you.
We can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
We can see it.
Pardon me?
We can see it.
That's what I meant, but online they won't be able to see it.
There's a camera right
The
there.
camera right there.
Oh, okay. All right. Can you make out this at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, is there somebody in the audience can hold this up for me? Because that way I can point at things.
And if you could stand at the microphone, it's probably a bit easier for the people
Okay.
here.
Okay, so here's the river, blue. Here's King Street, Dufferin, and Victoria. And then across the river, I don't know the name of this road, but there's the mall and Sobeys and Superstore. Okay, and between the river and King Street, there's a substantial amount of land that is owned by the town, so I'm told, for which the town has no plans, so I'm told. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I inquired with your engineering department. We've got the new park, and we've got the parkade, and we've got King's Court, and then another small parcel down here that's not developed. I don't know who owns that one. It's not very big, but still it's vacant. Now, what I'm thinking could be done, and this town's in a very unique position in that it owns all this land, and therefore it controls everything, controls the zoning. And by the way, there's nothing in this for me. I'm just a person concerned, okay? So the town owns all this land, which is the best real estate in Bridgewater. I mean, look at the location. Walk across this bridge and you're at the mall or the big stores if you want them. In any event, my idea is to develop the parkade into a combination of shops, offices, and cafes on the first level, with parking underneath. And I've investigated the parking fairly well, and with 2, maybe 3 levels of residential condominiums above, high quality. I've spoken to a realtor, and he thinks they would sell quite well. The town could start by doing the parkade, which is quite an eyesore, frankly. I was just there about a half an hour ago doing some measurements, and see how that all went. And you could leave your traffic, at least for a while, perhaps with a light cutting it down to one lane. And if that went well and you could do the park, you could actually take some advantage from what's already been done there. But I'm sure it would cause a lot of teeth gritting to undo what was done there, but that sometimes we have to make tough decisions. And then perhaps the King's Court could be done in the same way as the parkade, at the same time or at a later time. There's a lot of property there. And as I said, it's got to be the best land in the city, and it's not being used for really anything very much.
So, Mr. Crane, we're at our 10-minute time. I'm hoping you'll take some questions from council.
I did write to ask that I had a little more time, but in any event.
Yeah, just we try to keep respect everyone's time and keep ourselves on track. So if we have what we've done in the past, is if we need more information, then we would certainly invite you to come back. I mean, I do appreciate some of your suggestions.
I haven't made them all yet, by the way.
I do want to point out that just for a couple of buildings, like the Bank of Montreal building and a couple of the others in your photos, those are either currently under development, they've certainly been purchased, or there's development to take place.
I knew that somebody had bought them and no doubt wanting to do something, but I would feel sorry for any merchant that's on that stretch.
So this is where I'm a little confused. So you're proposing shops on the other side of King Street while saying that the shops on the current side of King Street won't do well. So I'm confused of what...
Under the current state of the street, they won't do well. There's so few people, whereas if you have these apartments, first of all, occupied, and the one built across the road, and you're creating a population that's going to use shops, and then make the area attractive by making it ultimately by making it a pedestrian area, which can be reached by the new bridge. One of the other aspects of this down the road would be another bridge at the end of Sobeys, which would take the traffic that normally would take what we call the new bridge, its traffic, and come down Dufferin and then turn right just for a very slight jog, and then across. There's a property there for sale for $250,000. It's an ideal location to do that. Now, I'm not ignoring that there's budget issues here, but in any event, the idea is to make this an attractive and populated area, which will be good for all of the merchants on both sides of the road. But until that's done, it's the person's going to be committing financial suicide putting in any commercial on that street.
So the proposals that are currently either have already come to council or with staff coming back to council are for residential above the Bank of Montreal, above the old Gauss Furniture Building. So we will be actually doing what you're suggesting, which is bringing people back down to downtown.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
It is turning around. It's a long way to turn a whole street around, but
I don't know how you can say it's turning around. So many places have closed up.
Well, a lot of the empty buildings have now been purchased, and as I said, development agreements are working through their way through staff for redevelopment. We've had a number of new businesses open in the last couple of years. We've had a couple of businesses just expand. It wasn't that long ago that Ferkenstein, for example, more than doubled their space. Jack's is new. There's a new place at the bottom of Empire that's opening. Co3 is growing. King Street Beer just opened. As I said, the Bank of Montreal building, there's residential and retail proposed there. That group also bought a number of other properties on King Street because they see the potential. It's hard to turn a whole street around, but it's happening.
Well, that's fine, but why shouldn't the town take advantage of the fact that they own the prime property and do something with it?
So what you're proposing, though, is for us to build retail space and residential space where the parkade is?
Well, there's two ways to go. The town could do it, yes. And by the way, I was quite involved in the development of Whistler, so I've got some history. I lived in BC until 12 years ago, and I was very involved in Whistler. Some experience with what? Personal experience, just pass that around, with what a pedestrian area does for a town. There's an example. And that building you're looking at is my building.
Councillor McDonald, do you have a question, Councillor McDonald?
Yeah, so what you're suggesting, taking some of our green spaces and parking and redeveloping them into commercial and condos and so on, that would put us in direct competition with some of our taxpayers. Do you see a conflict in that? Do you see that being a concern?
No, I don't, but if you felt there was one, then you could ask for proposals from the development industry on these properties. The way they did it at Whistler was the town owned the land at what used to be called the garbage dump. It was a garbage dump. It was at the foot of the mountain, but a base of the mountain that was not the original lift area. And what they did is they put out to the public invitation for proposals for the development of various parcels. And I put a small group together that put the bid in on that building you're looking at there. And we got the proposal. And then the next step was you had to submit architectural and planning drawings and then build it. And so if you don't want to do the building, then you can do it that way. But you want to be in control of the process because you want to be sure the result is what we're looking for, which is an inviting, exciting, populated area. And could very well be quite profitable for the town, too. I mean, this land is worth quite a bit. The realtor I spoke to said the two-bedroom unit there could sell in today's market for maybe $375. It's not to be sneezed at. And I've measured it out and have some sense of how many units you could get. And out of the parkade, you could probably get about 50 units. And this is with parking underneath. The parking access would be from Dominion down, and you slope it down. You'd have to have a little bit of an overpass for King Street, what's left of it. I haven't surveyed it. It might not be much needed. Anyways, you have parking access from there. You go left to the King's Court, 2 levels. There's plenty of height there for 2 levels, or go right to the parkade under there. And I've looked underneath and taken pictures. Aside from having been a lawyer, I was also an engineer before I was a lawyer. And then I got involved in things like this. And now I'm just trying to enjoy life as a retired. So once again, there's nothing in this for me unless you want to give me the job to get it done, which I could. But you could go, as I said, one of 2 ways. Either develop the town, do it itself, having a good management team, or put it out for proposals, perhaps in 3 different parcels. And
Any
by the
other-
way, I suggest you take it out to the middle of King Street Road, the road, to pick up that additional land and narrow it. You know how charming old cities are where the streets were built before there were cars. They're narrow, and they're very pleasant. And that's what you want to do with it, I think.
Any other questions from members of council? No? So thank you, Mr. Cram.
Okay.
If we need more information, we know how to reach you. And thank you for your presentation and your ideas.
You're welcome.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to come as a delegation before council? Seeing none, we'll go down to our next item, which is the minutes of February 10th, regular town council meeting there. Any errors or omissions there? Hearing none, we'll declare the minutes approved and go down to correspondence for information. And again, this is just for information, but you have a letter there from Spitfire Sign Shop regarding election signage. It is an election year, so that is there for your review. And we'll go right down to reports and recommendations and Canadian Institute of Health Research co-application with McGill University and Nova Scotia Health Authority. And just looking to staff to see who's our Director of Community Development is going to be walking us through this. Thank you.
I'm going to start off, and then I'm going to pass it over to Colleen.
All right.
So my e-scribe just closed on me, so just one moment here. We were approached by Dr. Mylene Riva from the Department of Geography at McGill University last year as a Smart Cities finalist for a workshop that she and some colleagues from across Canada were undertaking. And then she subsequently approached us again about a project, a research project that she would like to partner with the town on, where she would be, she's one of the national experts on health. Sorry, my document is not loading here. In this field of health, and she wanted to study the impact of addressing energy poverty on improvements to people's overall health. And so she is looking to apply for a large research grant. Thank you, Don. For a large research grant, and she's looking for support from the town in that grant. Pardon me. I will pass it over to Colleen to provide a few more details. The alignment with the Smart Cities work and our energy poverty reduction program is significant, and it would add a lot of capacity and research capacity, and the evaluation component of which we're required to undertake as part of our Smart Cities Challenge project. Colleen.
Thank you. So the specific area of expertise that Dr. Riva has is that she's a leading researcher in the field of measuring the qualitative and quantitative impacts of housing on health. And participating in this project with McGill and partnering would actually work toward delivering some of the outcomes that are required of the Smart Cities mandate. With respect to the budget, it would definitely, there would be no cost or financial expectations from our project, so we just wanted to make that very clear. The estimate is that the CIHR funding, which is a project with a $1.5 million value on it, and it's a 7-year longitudinal study, it would displace between $250,000 and $450,000 of our budget that could then be reallocated to another area of our project. And as our director said, the partnership itself, it would connect the Energize Bridgewater project to a team of researchers and global experts in this field, and just wanted to thank you for considering the report.
Questions from Council, Deputy Mayor Tanner.
Colleen, can I just get clarity about what do you mean by displace?
Oh,
You have the funding.
so we have an intention to spend the entire amount of the Smart Cities budget.
Right.
So when we locate other funding sources, so grants or subsidies, they can come into our project with the way that it's structured and then be allocated to another portion of our project.
Okay.
So we would not then have to allocate, our $250,000 to $450,000 toward this type of work.
Okay, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
Other questions, Councillor Graves?
Just a comment, this is brilliant. This is great. This is really good news. And, being associated with McGill and having someone for 7 years and having it paid for and putting Bridgewater on the map, kudos. Kudos to you all. That's really good. Love it.
Councillor Thurman?
This one, because we were both on the SHAC, Social Housing Action Coalition, and they're doing great things with energy poverty and illness caused by understanded homes that they live in. And this is awesome. I can't thank you enough, and certainly sounds like something we should be partnering in. I would support the motion.
I love the opportunities that have become opportunities for Bridgewater that we never would have had Smart Cities Challenge not taking place, let alone us winning it, right? Like, it's not every day that McGill comes knocking, or some of the other opportunities we've had, and the end result will be the betterment of the lives for our people, and then that will just spread as we, as this is used by other communities. So
Yeah.
this is echoing everyone else's comments. This is fantastic.
It raises our profile to another level.
Yep, it really does. Someone prepared to make a motion?
Nobody-
Councillor Thurman.
I would move that council for the town of Bridgewater direct staff to enter into a partnership with McGill University and the Nova Scotia Health Authority to submit an application to the Canadian Institutes for Health Research for funding towards a proposed research initiative entitled Energy Poverty and Health in Canada, from mapping the problem to conducting intervention research.
Seconded by Councillor Graves. Further discussion?
Question?
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Our next item is the monthly building permit applications for January 2020. So that's there. We had a great 2019, and seems like a little bit of a slower start to 2020, but staff are probably saying that's fine. They've got a lot in the hopper. We've got a lot of projects, as I said earlier, coming back to council, large projects that will transform the downtown that I know staff are working on. I'm looking at Nick at the back, just probably run off your feet with all the stuff that's coming in. So January 2020 is there. If there's any questions, you can reach out to the managers for that. The next item is Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program 2019 Annual Report. That is there. We talk about this as the monthly reports come in. I don't know if there's any questions or any comments with that. Yes, Councillor Thurman.
I'm just amazed on how far we've come since we started. We've leaps and bounds with the number of cases and people involved, and we've expanded our values from a small area to a large area. And it makes the program awesome and well worth supporting.
Yeah, it's been 10 years.
10 years.
And you're right, it's been quite something.
Yeah, great staff.
Yep.
Dedicated.
Yeah. So if there's any questions, you know who to reach out to for that. Third quarter financial report is there. And our Director of Finance, Mrs. Kaiser, is here to tell us all the good news.
Well, I'll make a few comments. There are more detailed explanations in the report, but in summary, we're projecting a surplus of a little over $1.2 million this year. Highlights are, and that is huge. Highlights are deed transfer taxes has been, it's projected to be over $500,000 over budget. There have been a number of large sales transfers that have contributed to that, but that's $509,000 of it. In addition, the police fees for service, they started this new arrangement this year. with the criminal records checks, and again, $175,000 over budget. There are also some provincial grants that we weren't anticipating. There was one in planning, and a couple of the additional officers, we're also being reimbursed for expenses this year instead of just the straight salaries. And there's also a transfer in from reserves to fund the Girl Guide grant based on the 93 Dominion Street sale. So that is offset, obviously, by an over expenditure on the other side. So on the expenditure side, we've got police, fire, projecting to be over budget, other protective services as well. We've had a vacancy in building fire inspection area. Rec programming is one that's worth mentioning, and that's the savings there is mainly due to the grant that was budgeted for the field house that we didn't end up giving. Roads and streets are projected to be under budget as well on the expenditure side. Just other operational requirements prohibited some of the work that they had planned to do. And offsetting all of that, I mean, there are some negative variances, but the biggest one is Hurricane Dorian. Of course, it's about $40,000 in expenses that weren't anticipated during budget season. And that's probably some of the other operational things that they had to take care of.
Right.
So I'd be happy to answer any more detailed questions. The capital is there as well, showing what the year-end projections are and how those projects are progressing.
Questions? Councillor McGinnis.
Two. One question, one comment. The municipal scorecard is going to look awfully bad on us this year.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah, we did too well.
When you miss budget, apparently, in a good way even,
Yeah.
it's a bad thing, according to these people. This I will never understand. You say we had some damage from Dorian, it's about $40,000?
Yes, plus we have another $150,000 coming in the capital budget this coming year to replace a culvert on King Street.
So the question I have, is there not a disaster relief program federally that we can apply to?
Two staff and myself are actually meeting with them on Thursday of this week to see if we qualify. A lot of the $40,000 is staff charges and vehicle charges, so whether or not those are eligible is questionable. And the other part of it is we haven't done the King Street culvert yet, so we'll just have to see what they say, but we are speaking to them on Thursday.
Well, you can do two things. Just don't tell them with the surplus and tell them we can't afford it.
Mayor Tanner. Was that, or did you have was that your comment?
I'm good.
Okay. Sorry.
Tom, we had savings in the community events coordinator. How did that transpire?
I think it is Pat here.
Largely a late start. We didn't hire Alex until well into May last year, so that was a bit of it. And then part of it was also that we wanted to have some of his time left for Christmas on the Lehave as well, so there was some planning around that.
Okay.
Other questions from the council? It's nice to kind of start from a good news position. So, hats off to staff, all the staff teams that, manage their budgets really well.
And we can't say for certain. I mean, it could snow the whole month of March, but just saying.
So now this is where we have our public service announcement where please do not blame the town if it snows all of March. Rutgers Finance does not control the weather.
I most definitely don't.
That's engineering. Any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you, Don. That's great. I'm waiting for my email from there. Strategic priorities work plan for 2020-2021 is there. Did you want to go over that?
Just quickly.
You don't want to say?
Don't want to say a lot.
No, okay.
No. So council has established strategic priorities, and we review those thoroughly on an annual basis, where we kind of do a little check-in and see what may have changed. We do this in advance of our budget, because our budget forms our business plan and our work plan that goes throughout the organization. So on January 17th, we met to review and establish the strategic priorities for 2020-21, and the results are appended to the report. Then the management team took a day, and we developed the work program on February 4th that would help implement your strategic priorities, and that's also attached to the report. And what this work plan will do, as I mentioned, it has each project has an owner and a lead, so we'll ensure that those priorities filter through the performance of each department in terms of achieving the goals that you set. In terms of service enhancements, the work plan does propose, based on the priorities that you've set, that we look at, and you'll debate these during budget time, of course, because you need to see the full financial picture before you would approve these items, but it does propose that we look at a grant coordinator position to help source funding. We have some significant capital challenges coming our way with our wastewater treatment, and some funding that's available, but that does take resources. The size of the grants we're going to be looking at will take resources in order to apply for them, and then if we're successful, monitor the claims, submit the claims, and track expenses. And we're also, council wanted to explore their role in economic development, and that kind of came out of when the REN folded and the BDA, we took that back. The question is where are we most effective? Where can we add value in terms of supporting our business community and providing the foundation for growth within our community? So those propose that we put resources financially towards those within the work program. And the other service enhancement that is proposed is the Bridgewater Memorial Arena, which is looking at repurposing that building for community use as well. And as I indicated, those three have financial implications, and they will be proposed in the operating and capital budget, and you'll have an opportunity to determine whether or not those are reflect your wishes once you see the entire financial picture for the town. And once approved by council, these will form part of the work program for each department and set our goals for the year.
Questions from council? It's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Great. All right. Bring on budget time. Our next item is Bridgewater Built Heritage Guide. That is there, and I see Mr. Brown is here to walk us through this. Good. Just bear with me for a moment.
All right. Thanks for having me. On behalf of the Bridgewater Heritage Advisory Committee, I'm here to present the Built Heritage Guide, resource manual for residential buildings. You have a report, and this is a presentation for information purposes, both for council and for the general public. The idea for the Bridgewater Built Heritage Guide was conceived by the Heritage Advisory Committee to promote our built heritage and, importantly, to create resource material for property owners within the town's residential architectural control area. The residential architectural control area is an overlay zone in the land use bylaw that includes properties on Pleasant Street, Queen Street, and York Street between Victoria Road and Dufferin, with some areas beyond, including Dufferin Street up to the exhibition. The controls apply to main buildings and larger accessory structures built prior to 1920 and after 1997. So the Heritage Guide includes 10 sketches of homes within the town, representative of different pre-1920 architectural styles. Also includes a glossary of terms with sketches. The committee recognized the value of having these annotated sketches within the guide, so they approached Parkview to see if a student could help. Katie Wenzel provided the drawings for the guide, and she did an amazing job helping create a useful and appealing document.
Love it.
The Heritage Guide also contains excerpts from the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada concerning rehabilitation and restoration best practices. So the guide was launched in the December edition of The Bridge. It's been posted to social media and is on the town's website. is available for pickup at Town Hall and the Des Brisets Museum. And the committee intends to mail out information to those property owners within the residential architectural control area, along with excerpts from the land use bylaw that would have the rules and regulations associated with the architectural controls. So, yeah, thank you on behalf of the Heritage Advisory Committee. I invite you to, if you have questions, you can approach any members of the committee at any time, of course, or right now, if you have any questions, I can do my best to answer those.
Questions from council? You know, I just have a question. As someone who owns a home in the architectural control zone. So as we try to make our homes greener, and Energized Bridgewater is a great example, going through that plan, are we finding that there's enough, how do I phrase this? If I want to redo my house, there's enough of materials out there to redo it to make it as tight as I want it while respecting the restrictions that are in place for this? Or do we need to somehow do more to make it like within the industries that are available, whether it's shingles, siding, windows and doors, things like that, so that we can keep the character of these homes while respecting the homeowners' desire to make their house a little more modern, not by look, but by its standard?
Yeah, so the controls, it's not quite the same as if these properties were designated heritage properties. It is the public facade only that the controls are dealing with, and it's really about resembling pre-1920 built heritage in Bridgewater. Materials do come into play. There are gains that can be made through alternative materials than what you would have seen pre-1920. But that's where the town is a little bit flexible in allowing some materials to be used as long as from the street they resemble pre-1920 materials. And the main purpose of the zone is to preserve the pre-1920 architectural styles and character-defining elements that make those historically significant. So there is some flexibility built into the controls to allow for some alternative materials. The committee, the Heritage Advisory Committee, is also very much interested in creating a program, and the committee is just in the very beginning stages of doing so, to provide some incentive to those property owners to adhere to the controls, whether that could be a number of different things, but possibly rebates and that sort of thing. So that's something that the Heritage Advisory Committee intends to work on this coming year. But in the end, the committee is also going to strive to make sure that homes are energy efficient as well.
All right, thank you. Questions, Councilor Rice?
Just another comment. That's a great looking document. You guys did a really good job on that. And those drawings are fantastic. Kudos to the student, and kudos to the committee. It's like good information in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other questions? All right. Thank you. Thanks. Staying with Heritage, we have Heritage Advisory Committee terms of reference there. I don't know if there's any questions. If someone wants to just, it's pretty straightforward. Put a motion on the floor.
I'll make a
Councilor
motion,
Gier?
Your Worship. Yes. That Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the revised Heritage Advisory Committee terms of reference as presented in document 20-048, granting an increase to the maximum number of members to 9.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Going down to business rising and unfinished business, policy 96, Bridgewater Facade Improvement Program, proposed changes. I don't know if the director going to speak to that, just to kind of, we talked about this before, maybe just a super quick recap.
Yes, just a quick recap. It's been discussed at council a few times in the past few months about bringing some changes forward to the current program. And the first is to restrict signage eligibility to 25% funding to a maximum of $500, rather than it being part of the overall 5,000 and could be more than that. And also to limit the number of applications to one per property identification, so per PID, per fiscal year, except corner lots with 2 public facades. And then we also are suggesting to remove Appendix B and C from the policy so that the guidance document comes out of the policy itself to make it easier to just, fix little things in the, or change out images or that sort of stuff with the actual document. So those are the 3 things that are coming before you this evening.
Any questions to staff? Hearing none, someone prepared to make a motion?
Sure, Your Worship,
Thank
I'll
you.
move that. I move the Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater approve the revised Bridgewater facade improvement policy and design manual is presented in document 19-132B as per policy 996 for the town, effective immediately.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thorburn. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next item is Bridgewater Tennis Club request for assistance for resurfacing the courts. We had presentation from the delegation at the last meeting, with quite a bit of information. And so, as delegations do, this has come back for council for some discussion or debate. And there's a motion on the books there, but I just want to make clear that you can change the motion if you want. So if you, I know there were some questions about the grants committee, and does a portion of this go to the grants committee and a portion of this go to the budget? So just a reminder that you can edit that motion as you most see fitting for this. What is Councilor Frazier?
Just with myself and Councillor McGuinness, who sit on grants to organization, I felt that it was more appropriate for it to come to council based on the dollar figure that they're requesting.
Okay, no, thank you. Councilor McGuinness?
I'm assuming that this motion is to refer to budget deliberations. Any changes we may want to make or suggestions would be at that time?
Yeah, that's normally what we would do. We would go through.
You wouldn't have to do it in this motion.
Correct.
Just defer it there,
Yeah, when we do our budget deliberations, if we say we want to, give this amount or
Yeah.
tie it to something, we would do that, yes. Correct. Good question. Deputy Mayor?
Do we have a timeline of when they wanted to try and do this? I mean, obviously it's conditional on funding coming in, but like if they miss a timeline like April 1st, does that mean it pushes into the next fiscal? Do we know that information? No. Okay.
No. In what the tennis club has conveyed to me is that their aim is to do this
summer.
This
Or
summer.
spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah.
We'll have budget beginning of April. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Thorburn?
I believe I read somewhere, maybe one of the documents where they were actually maybe proposing to do it in phases, not doing it all in 1 year, which would allow us to look at that. In practice, we can't.
So, I can speak to that. They conveyed to me that there's some work that they could do right now.
Right.
In this fiscal year, and then the rest would be completed in the 2021 fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions? Someone prepared to make a motion? Deputy Mayor Tanner?
I move that Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater refer the request from Bridgewater Tennis Club for funding assistance to the 20-21 budget deliberations.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Frazier. Anything further? No. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll discuss that at budget time. Next item is Policy 33, Tax Collection Proposed Revision. I'll just a refresher for the public, especially.
The town's tax collection policy dates back to 2007, and it references, there's a real property section, which basically is a regurgitation of the tax sale process in the MGA. And then there's a business occupancy taxes section, and of course we don't have business occupancy taxes anymore. So the policy, as it read, really was no longer relevant. So it has been rewritten to include things that are relevant to give guidance to staff in tax collection matters.
Perfect. Any questions from council? Someone prepared to make a motion, please? Councilor McDonald?
I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the revised tax collection as presented in document 20-0029 as policy 33 for the town effective immediately.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Thorburn. Discussion? Very straightforward. Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next one is notice. Personnel policies and procedures manual, vacation carry forward, wording change. So,
Yep, so you gave notice at the last meeting, and what this would do is essentially make the personnel policy with respects to vacation carryover match the recommendation of our auditors, which is that we take care of the carryover, and we're aligning it to the end of the fiscal year, so that the policy right now says anniversary day for carryover, and we're recommending that go to March 31st, so it aligns with the fiscal year. It doesn't affect vacation entitlement or anything like that. It's about the point in time in which you can carry over days, and that'll be March 31st.
and that's the same for every employee.
Easier
Easier to manage.
It will be put under that, yeah.
Yeah. Any questions to staff? Councilor McGinnis?
I guess a question for the viewing people there. Do we have a lot of vacation carryover?
Not as of March 31st, 2020, no.
Okay.
No, I believe the auditors commented on that several years ago, and we gave staff 2 years to essentially use up their vacation carryovers that they had. And now we're aligned with the policy of council, and we'll ensure that going forward, it's the 5 days a year unless there's unusual circumstances around it.
Any other questions?
The motion?
Just give this 1 second because the motion's being updated. You sure nobody else has any questions? Well, I'll just say, thank you to staff who, that's a change to be able to have this carryover and then to work towards a change where that's been reduced. So that takes, some effort and not always easy on their part. So thank you to staff for doing that, and thank you for Tammy in leading that charge to get that down as well. So team effort from everybody. Okay, so just refresh your e-scribe, and then Councilor Brazier, if you'd like to make a motion, that would be appreciated.
Yeah.
Yes, the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approved the vacation carry forwards and personnel policies and procedure manual as presented in document 20-037 for the town effective immediately.
All right, thank you. Seconded by Councilor Graves. Further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Our next item is the Bridgewater Memorial Arena Public Engagement. I know. Don't laugh at me. Public Engagement Report and next steps. So we had a couple of events where we were most, if not all day, in the new space at South Shore Center, which is quite inviting for public engagement. So for those of you I haven't spoke to, I would recommend we use that for a Talk Bridgewater session in the future, because that was a really nice space. And then there was engagement in the evening at the museum, and so well received by the public. And so the feedback we received was, I would say, overwhelmingly positive in terms of doing something with the building. So that's prompted this to come back to us to see what council wants to do with it. So part of that is it would be have to go to the next step, which is what you have in your motion here, to at least put something into the draft budget to do the revitalization of that facility, noting that by putting it in, recommending it goes to the draft budget, we would have a larger debate at that. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. By referring this to the budget, it does not mean that it is approved in the budget.
That's good.
Okay, so I just want to say that for the public so that they don't think that that's just been quickly passed, but also for council, because I know I myself have some questions, and so I need a little bit more time to process that. So, but I will open the floor to discussion or questions. We have staff here. What's council's wish? We can talk about it a little bit now, or we can just refer to the budget.
Oh, no, mine can go in the budget process. I'm wanting to talk a little bit about the Arts and Culture Center that we're talking about. And in fact, that it's a regional facility. And so it should be a regional responsibility, but that's something we can discuss in the budget.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Graves.
I just hope that the BMA is turned into a community hub that really welcomes a lot of people. There's apart from the 3 or 4 that are already proposed, there's lots of other spaces or other organizations that could make use of that space. BMA, it's very hard to find large areas. So something like a family resource center, maybe a youth center, a tool lending library. I just hope that those types of things are considered when the plan is put together.
I'm happy to refer to budget. This project's moving along really quickly, which is great in some senses, but in others, it's moving along too quickly for my liking, honestly. I don't think we're ready to spend I'm not ready to spend $100,000 on a detailed design until we have more answers on things like regional funding, things like ACOA funding, things like who truly are going to be tenants and what they're willing to pay. And we're in a state of heavy borrowing, or going to be in a state of heavy borrowing within the town. So this, I want something to happen with BMA, but I'm just going to perhaps take it a little slower.
Is someone prepared to put a motion on the floor? Councilor Frazier?
Yes, I'll put a motion that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of staff and include $100,000 in the draft 2020-21 budget to engage a consultant to carry out a detailed design work for the proposed repurposing of the former Bridgewater Memorial Arena.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor McDonald. Further discussion? I just had a question. So since we've gone out to the public with this, have we received anything back from really the 2 large groups that were interested, which is South Shore Players or the Farmers Market, in terms of not just their feedback, but anything more concrete in terms of how they're prepared to walk with us in this journey?
Yeah, during the engagement that we did specifically with the feasibility study, ACE had detailed discussions with both of those entities, and both the Farmers Market and the Players indicated that they were more than willing to have advanced discussions with us and proceed with exploring an MOU with the town, so that there would be some commitment and the council would know what the potential revenue streams would be from those 2 organizations if this project moves forward. In addition to that, through our public engagement process, Mr. Mayor, as you alluded to earlier, during that day of public engagement and about 3 weeks of online engagement, we received feedback from close to 200 individuals. And to Councillor Graves' point, a lot of that feedback involved bringing to our attention additional groups that would be interested in using that space. So it's something that we can speak more in depth about as council goes into budget deliberations. Obviously, until there are MOUs in place with each of those groups, nothing is written in stone. But from a staff standpoint, we feel pretty confident that there's a lot of potential users for the space.
I guess just anticipating perhaps some of the questions coming, and one of them might be just if we could reach out to South Shore Players and probably the Farmers Market to say, beyond the MOU that would be revenue for us from the renting of the facility, are they prepared to, are they even able to, they're looking at $100,000 for detailed design work. Is there any funding from them or from sources that they can access that we can't, that would be their contribution towards that? So I know you can't answer that now, but it might be a question worth asking them, because the rent revenue is one thing, but there's a lot of heavy lifting in terms of construction and design work. And to Councilor McGinnis's point, it's a regional facility. We have partners that we should be reaching out to at MODL, because it is regional. We can't do it on our own. And so I'd like I'd like to know before we get to budget if they're at the table or not.
Okay, so I was just gonna ask, do you want us to make that contact with
I think
them?
we should.
Okay.
$100,000 is not a cheap date, and I
Yep.
don't think we want to be sitting at the table alone. So I think they're just good questions to ask to know
Mhm.
where we are.
Yep.
Does that sound fair and reasonable to everybody?
Mhm.
Awesome. So we've had the mover, we've had a seconder. Any further discussion?
Sure.
Questions being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And our final item is grant of easement to GE's All Trucking Limited for the lane down
Yep.
through there.
So this.
I'll describe it.
Uh-huh. So this is, the town of Bridgewater has already granted GE's All Trucking on York Street the ability to use the driveway that accesses our Public Works garage at 134 St. Phillips. And this was done through a development agreement in which the development agreement stated that the town permits the developer to use the existing town-owned driveway on the abutting 134 St. Phillips Street property for an indefinite period of time, but that the town reserved the right to relinquish said permission at any time in the future. The municipal group, which is GE's, has submitted a request for a right-of-way over that would be permanent in nature, so they want to bring some permanency to it. And in exchange for a right-of-way, they would grade and pave the access point, so they would grade that. The easement document you have shows how far up they would pave that. Council considered this matter at an in-camera session and gave direction to draft the easement. So what you have before you is the easement. It's been prepared by legal counsel. It's been reviewed by the municipal group's legal counsel. So both legal counsels are in agreement with the easement, so that's good. And what it'll do is it'll enable GEs to use that indefinitely, permanently. It'll require that they pay that and grade that, but it won't be exclusive. The town still has the right to use that for access to our public works facilities as well. And GEs will be required to upgrade, pave, and maintain that portion of the right-of-way to our standards.
The end of the driveway where that meets, where they're stopping paving, does that then go to dirt?
It's, yep, at that point,
It's ours.
it's ours, yeah.
And it's dirt,
It's gravel or
right?
dirt,
So
yeah.
does it make any sense that while they've got all their equipment all out and ready to go, that they continue onto our lot, or?
We can, probably that part would be at our expense, but we can
Yeah.
certainly look at what that would cost and present that to you with some numbers. You're not gonna be paving, like in the next couple weeks type
Right.
thing, right? So, but I know they do wanna pave as soon as the weather permits. So we can certainly ask the question and see what the cost would be for us to pave up to our
I'm
buildings.
just wondering if that was something that was advantageous to Public Works up there.
I think they would like it, yeah.
If it was more cost effective to do that,
Yeah,
maybe we could
Piggyback that.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is someone prepared to make a motion? Thank you.
I would move that town council for the town of Bridgewater approve the grant of easement in favor of GE's All Trucking Limited over town land, PID 600229477, for execution by the mayor and CAO on behalf of the town.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Frazier. Any discussion?
Question.
Questions being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. That concludes our meeting. We don't have any other business, and we don't have any in-camera items today. So a motion to adjourn, please.
moved.
Councilor Thorburn, seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. We are adjourned.